Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Luke Mick, and you know what you clicked on. This is another Criterion Marathon. Now, just so I'm transparent and being clear with all of you, this one, for me, technically is not a marathon. I don't really have the time in my schedule right now to block out an entire day to watch 3 movies in a row, but doing it this way I think will help me in that I won't feel as rushed, and I'll also have a better chance to watch some of the supplements that go with the films chosen for this episode of Criterion Marathon. So, I don't know, I'm kind of excited to format it this way and see how it works out.
That'll plan!
So without any further ado, please let us start this Criterion Marathon with our first film. I just watched Come and See for the first time, obviously. There's a lot to talk about with this one, and I feel like this might be another Woman in the Dunes discussion. We'll see if I can contain myself, but I don't know if I'll be able to do that for this. So the plot of Come and See is pretty simple, and I'll just lay it out real quick. Essentially, it's about a young Belarusian boy, age 15 or so, who decides to join the Soviet army in the fight against the Nazis as they are invading Belarus and destroying villages, as we see throughout the film. And in this, he is leaving his mother and twin sisters, but he's very excited and joyful. He's ready to join the fight. You know, he's the type of character who has this patriotism for his homeland, and he wants to do whatever he can to protect it. He feels like it's his duty. He's coming of age, and he wants to be a part of the fight. And of course, we see throughout the film that it is not a glorified war. It is not all fun and games. A similar film that explored this, and a lot of war films do, but one that comes to mind for me is They Shall Not Grow Old, the documentary directed by Peter Jackson, which goes into this expectation of these young British teenagers joining the World War I, thinking it was going to be tea and fun and games, but it's not. So with that pretty simple plot set up, the rest of the film basically follows his every move and just his experiences over the course of 2 very short days. A lot happens to this boy in that time, and by the end of it, I thought, wow, I can't believe it's only been 2 days. He goes through a lot of changes, obviously, and before I go any further, I'd just like to say, if you have not seen Come and See, you should watch the film before watching this portion of the video, because I'm most likely going to get into some spoilery things, so just be warned. So the first thing I want to quickly talk about with this film is the performance of our lead. The actor's name is Alexei Kravchenko, and he, from what I understand, was pretty much an unknown actor. He was just cast in the movie, probably based on his look and demeanor, which was genius, because this kid, his face, his eyes, his expressions, everything that the character has to go through in this film, he's able to relay that through his stance and his emotions that he gives. It's a really great performance. The character doesn't speak often. There aren't a ton of conversations in this film. It's more actions rather than words. His way of conveying the emotions of this character and the confusion and everything going around him was just so believable. He just had this sort of innocence and life that you could really latch on to and connect with throughout the entire movie. He was always someone you could look at and just see this ounce of hope. It was like the perfect breaking of innocence. So I gotta commend him for that. He's a major part of the movie. He's in basically the whole thing, and I think they did a damn good job of casting him, and he did a damn good job of performing in this film. Now, really, the rest of what I want to talk about is all with the technicals of this film, the cinematography, and the sound design. There are some really cool things happening with the soundscape of this film. It has just this barrage of explosions, gunshots, people yelling, this very low murmuring synth type score that will very organically change into the sound of this just low humming plane flying through the air. The film does an ingenious job of crafting the sounds of this film and just creating this unsettling, unnerving atmosphere throughout. This is a very auditory film, and it just does a tremendous job of creating this tense, almost unearthly, ungodly sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but it just gives the film a certain mood that is unmatched to any war film that I personally have seen. There's also some weird, like, vocal manipulation and, like, filters or something being put on characters' voices at times. The very first character to speak, or the second character to speak right at the beginning of the film, is this young boy with a rifle, and he sounds like a Jawa or something from Star Wars. Like, there's just this weird low raspiness that they did with his voice. I do not think it was his natural voice. And then a little bit later in the film, after some explosions go off, a character goes kind of deaf and can barely hear anything. And that same, like, raspy, weird filter on the voices and all the other sounds of the film are just, like, creating this weird, distorted feeling. It almost reminded me of something like David Lynch would do in, like, Twin Peaks or something, or maybe something from Eraserhead. It was very off-kilter and kind of put me on edge. I was like, this is very weird sound design, and I really liked it. And now I'll talk a little bit about the cinematography. I just said a little bit, but I'll actually be talking, I think, a lot about the cinematography. The way that they captured all of the events that happen in this film, and especially in the last, like, 40 minutes. The last 40 minutes of this film is, like, a non-stop, like, punch to the senses. The camera it's almost like it's dancing through this setting, through the scene in the last part of this film. There's this very rhythmic motion and attitude that the camera work has. It's incredible because although the camera is moving around so much, weaving in and out of different people and what's happening to them in these horrible scenes, the lighting and the backgrounds and everything about the cinematography is just so consistent, with so much going on, with so many burning buildings, flames, gunshots, people everywhere, mud, fog, rain, whatever, you name it. Like, the film has such a consistent quality to the cinematography. I knew this film would be a spectacle. I knew that people really like this film. I was expecting it to be a visual masterpiece, and it is. It's a gorgeous looking film, and to me it's just incredible how well they were able to capture the chaos that happens in this film. And then the quiet moments too. There are scenes in the woods where the sunlight is beaming through and there are shadows everywhere with the tall, thin trees in the forest, and it just is always such an immaculate looking film. It's incredible. It was just so naturalistic and real looking. Everything about this film and the way that it would capture the environments and nature just looked so natural. It was perfect. I guess just to sum up my thoughts and feelings on Come and See, it's seriously just a tremendous film that is just a shock to the senses, emotionally and physically, everything. I was literally, like, under my breath saying, oh my god, at a few of the scenes in this film. There's one in particular I want to mention that just got me, and I didn't even know I was this emotionally invested in what was happening, but when he goes back to the village with the girl in the green dress, I can't remember her name, and the camera cuts to all of the dead villagers against that barn or whatever. Only she sees it, he does not. He keeps moving forward in hopes of finding his sisters and mother, but obviously they're dead. And that, like, cut to that image for that 3 seconds was just so shocking and awful. My eye almost started tearing. I was like, Jesus. I was like, this is a fucking shocking event. Like I said, I didn't know I was that invested in it, but that scene just got me. And from there are plenty of moments in this film that just have horrendous brutality and an inhumanity that you see in war films. You see this type of stuff all the time in these types of films, but in this one, just the juxtaposition of the beauty of the filmmaking and the environments and the nature mixed with these horrible emotional moments was just a lot. There is just a ton of imagery in this film that is completely horrific. There's a scene where the villagers or people who are kind of on the outskirts who made it out of the village, and some soldiers make like this dummy Hitler, and it just looks so grotesque and awful. It's so unsettling. This film just drags you through the fucking dirt. It really does, and through the mud, just like the characters do. Like, it's just, this film has this overwhelming dread throughout the whole thing, but at the same time, it's just so eye-catching and wonderful to look at. Come and See is a fantastic experience film. It is not for the faint of heart. It is a very brutal and disturbing and upsetting film that if you don't want to see violent, realistic portrayals of war and just straight up carnage, then don't watch the film. But if you want to be brought on this emotional, spiritual journey that Come and See has to offer, then watch it. Why am I talking to you like you haven't seen the film? Most of you have probably seen the film if you're watching me blabber about it like this. I was a big fan of Come and See, and there are going to be 2 more movies now to talk about. I wonder if they will live up to the experience that was Come and See. They're going to be very tonally different. This sets a very weird standard. I've never started a Criterion Marathon with such an intense first film. So that's Come and See. Let's move on to the next part of the marathon. It's a new day, everybody, and it's A Taste of Cherry. A Taste of Cherry is written, directed, produced, and edited by world-famous Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami. It's essentially about a lonely man who lives in Tehran who has come to the conclusion that he wants to kill himself, and he's essentially driving around the outskirts of Tehran looking for the perfect candidate to go to him the following day and complete his burial. Already, that is just a pretty heavy subject matter for a film, somebody dealing with suicide, but it's not very generic at all. We never figure out what brought him to that point. We really don't learn much of anything about his past, other than that he served in the army and he enjoyed drill exercises and things like that. This film, I would describe it as very slice of life, and it's very naturalistic, which is something I've noticed in previous Kiarostami films that I've seen, the other 2 being Close Up and Certified Copy. Both of those films are also very reserved in just the way that they capture conversation and the actions unfolding on screen. And Taste of Cherry definitely is very similar to those films in that respect. I guess I'll just get into what I feel like I experienced through this film and just things about it that I noticed that I'd like to talk about. Something that I noticed right off the bat in the first 20 to 30 minutes of the movie is that the camera and the directing just never left our main character alone. The movie seemed to move as if it were moving in real time. It wasn't all done in one shot, but it never jump cut. It never cut to like a new environment or a new scene or a new day or anything like that. It was always focused on him either driving around, scoping people out, or inviting people into his car, or having conversations with people. It was literally just this very repetitious flow of things where that's pretty much all we were seeing. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that was the structure of the movie. But soon after the halfway point of this film, I would say, it cuts, and it was really jarring to me. I thought I was watching it, and there's a pretty slow scene right before it happens where he just takes a breather, he gets out of his car, and he sits and watches some bulldozers just pour a bunch of rocks into a hole. And he's told to leave, and he gets up and he is about to get into his car. But I swear the movie just cut to a person in his car already speaking to him, which was very strange because that is not the flow of the film at all up until this point. It really took me by surprise and just was not what I was expecting. I think I can kind of figure out and guess why they chose to do that. Setting up every character that he talks to up until this point, he has to seek them out. He looks for them, he asks them to get into the car if they need a ride somewhere, he initiates this conversation with them. But then all of a sudden we just cut to this man, the final man that he gives a ride, already speaking to him and talking to him about his plan. So it's almost like we missed part of the film. The film has a very straight, consistent, structure where it doesn't leave out any details, but then all of a sudden there's this little piece that's missing, and you're just left wondering, like, how did this guy get in the car? How did they meet? What happened here? And I think that the reason they did that was because this is the character in the film that really starts to sway our main character's view on life and the decision he's made for himself, and is the only person in the film really to, I guess, compel him to reconsider what he is asking the man to do. So I think that jarring cut as somebody in the audience, as a viewer, it's supposed to, I think, give you the same feeling that our main character feels when he all of a sudden has this opposing force, somebody who is legitimately trying to talk him out of this, and somebody who is really trying to get on his level. And it's also somebody who understands the situation he's in, feeling that way. He explains a certain time in his life when he was considering doing the same thing, and gives a very thoughtful and sweet story about why he changed his mind and why he didn't go through with his suicide. So from there, the movie just kind of goes on, and it ends with our main character laying in a hole, the hole that he has been planning to lay in for the entire film. He's expecting this man who gave him his story on suicide and life, he's expecting him to come and bury him in the morning, assuming that he does die in his sleep from taking these sleeping pills. And this last part of the film it's so ambiguous and very open-ended, as I was kind of expecting with this film. It's beautiful. It's raining, you hear thunder. I really love the sound of nature at the end of this film. And it really was just a very serene, peaceful moment of the film. And it's where you're really left, it's really left up to your interpretation and what you want to believe. Did he die or did he not die? Which is definitely one of the very powerful moments of this film. But then it does something so weird at the end that I don't know how to feel about. And I guess this is kind of Kiarostami style. If you've seen Close Up, it goes to behind the scenes footage of daytime now. It's no longer early morning or nighttime. It's bright outside. There are a bunch of soldiers on their march, and we see Abbas Kiarostami, the director. We see the actor smoking a cigarette, our main character, and it's just this weird, like, 2.5 minute behind the scenes, really low resolution footage at the end of the movie, and then the credits start rolling. I watched one of the supplements, or 1.5 of the supplements on the disc before filming this, and they did touch upon that on one of the supplements a little bit, and I don't know what the point of it was, really. I mean, I personally right now feel like the ending of the film would have been more poignant if it would have ended with it fading to black and leaving you with, did he fall asleep? Did he die? Is he going to be rescued? I would have preferred that because I just didn't feel like that behind the scenes footage added anything for me, but maybe I'm just missing the point of it, and I guess I'll have to read up on it a little bit to see how people interpret that and why they think it's in the film. So I guess that pretty much sums up my first impression here of Taste of Cherry. I feel the same. So a Kiarostami film that I've seen that I really love is Certified Copy. I actually have only seen that film once, but I think about it all the time. The more and more I think about it, the more I love it. And when I first saw it, right after watching the film, I did like it. I really was like, wow, that was a pretty powerful film, but I just didn't feel like 100% with it. But as time went on and as I thought more about it, I just started to realize that, you know what, I think about this film all the time. I really need to go back and rewatch this. I recommend it to people all the time. Certified Copy is great. And you know, I just finished watching Taste of Cherry less than an hour ago, so I feel like I might be in that same type of mindset where I just get done with the film and I'm just trying to process everything that's happening. I think that there's a very good chance that I will think more and more about this film as the weeks, months, maybe even just days go on. It's a slow burning movie. It's very patient and particular about what it shows you, which is basically everything. And in that way, I appreciate the realism of it. Does it make it a fully captivating film experience? I'm not sure yet, but that's just how I feel about it right now. I think that this one does definitely have the capacity to grow on me, just judging by my history with Kiarostami and his films. And yes, that's Taste of Cherry. That's what I thought of it. I think that's everything I wanted to say. Without prolonging this any further, let's move on to the final film of the Criterion Marathon. My first foray into French New Wave, Hiroshima Mon Amour. This was probably a really good first film for me to watch in the subgenre and era of French New Wave, considering that this film takes place mostly in Japan and I have quite a familiarity with Japanese film. This is like a good way to sort of mend the bridge and create the bridge to this other pocket of film. So Hiroshima Mon Amour stars Emmanuel Riva and Eiji Okada, and it's essentially just about two people who do not know each other, a man and a woman. They talk, they follow each other around, and they do not want to part each other, although they have no choice. They're not going to be able to see each other ever again after this day. If I had to compare this film to anything more modern, I'd definitely say Before Sunrise. It was very similar to that film. Two people, man and a woman, talking romantically and just talking about life over the course of a day into the night and then into the morning. So very similar films. I feel that there's no way that Richard Linklater made the first Before film without having Hiroshima Mon Amour on his mind, acting as a true inspiration for that film because they are very similar in the way they tell their story. So overall, I thought Hiroshima Mon Amour was really enjoyable. I can't say right now that it's a film that I really love. I think it's really good. There are great things about it. There's nothing about it that I can really say I didn't like. It can be a little bit overly romanticized and dramatic with certain expressions at times, but I think that overall it is a very touching and true story about forgetting, which is that's really what the film about is, forgetting love and forgetting the horrors of human actions, forgetting the horrors of war. This is a very beautiful film that shows the beauty of two different cities, Hiroshima and oh man, what is the name of the city she is from? Nevers? I'm pretty sure it's Nevers. I could be incorrect, but I really think that this film is drawing connections and comparisons to love for people and experiences and just moments and love for cities and architecture. There are lots of beautiful shots of both cities, Nevers and Hiroshima, in this film, while our characters are talking about their history of love.
So I missed!
And it's mostly Emmanuel Riva's character. Eiji Okada mostly is a listener throughout this film and doesn't really offer much about his past experiences, but she has quite the story to tell. And this film is really about getting into the center of her very tumultuous past, the difficulties she went through during the war. And although she wasn't directly affiliated with Hiroshima, she affiliates the events that occurred in Hiroshima to her past events and her past love. And yeah, this is a very sweet little film. It has a very surprising, like, jolt ending, kind of. It just ends, and I was just like, man, that's it. That is all there is. And I'm happy with that because it left me with some kind of emotional impact. I also want to mention the score for this film. I really loved it. A lot of flute and piccolo and piano and some guitar. It was really beautiful to accompany the music with this film with the shots of the city that I mentioned earlier, because this is a very gorgeous black and white film. It really is just a beautiful film that makes you think about all of the things in your life that you've forgotten and how easy it is to forget people, places, things, anything really. And I think that this film has a very strong and unique message that I can't say I've necessarily come across in a film or another medium before. Not saying that other films or books or anything haven't covered this, but I just really appreciate the way it was handled with this film. Yeah, I thought Hiroshima Mon Amour was really good. I'm excited to look into more French New Wave. I thought the acting in this was really wonderful, and just the lighting and walking around alone at night is something that I always find to be very soothing and serene and just pretty, and this film has quite a bit of that at the end with a lot of silence too. And I also just want to mention, this is a little scattered here, scatterbrain Luke Mick coming up, but the use of music and when it comes in, it's amazing. It's very appropriate when they decide not to use the music and when the music comes back in. There's one part towards the middle of the film where there's this kind of intense emotional discussion happening or story being told, and once it hits this climactic point, the music comes roaring back in, and this action by another character kind of sets that off. But yeah, this film left me with some things to think about for sure. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it's a great film. It's sweet, short. It's also brief. I feel like the film did a good job at conveying their feelings of this brief encounter and this lack of time very well to the audience. I felt the same way about it. That's Hiroshima Mon Amour. I think it's really good, and if it sounds like something you'd be interested in watching, I would say go ahead and do it, because it's not a waste of time if you ask me. I think it's a great little film. So that's everything. That is it for this Criterion Marathon. I want to thank you all for watching this. I really appreciate all of your support and all the great comments you leave down below. It seriously is so fun to read through all those and have discussions with all of you. So that's all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe if you are not already and you would like to be. And that's all I have for you. I'll talk to you all later.